following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government.
Don't panic. That was not a real emergency alert message, but it very well could have been. This is not going to be another COVID-19 video. It's going to be a video on what could happen because of COVID-19, or any perceived threat of a pandemic. My first bit of advice is prepare, don't panic. From what we know about COVID-19, it has a fatality rate of around 2%. Compared to the seasonal flu, that's a very low fatality rate. I have had friends tell me, and I've seen people on YouTube say, if COVID-19 gets bad in the U.S., they are going to hunker down in their homes and ride it out. This may sound like a good plan, but what will happen to our infrastructure if everyone is hunkering down and riding it out in their homes? But not everyone can stay home. The people that keep the lights on and the water running have to go to work, and if they won't or can't, things will quickly come to a stop. The problem that I see is that we are all dependent on our infrastructure, such as water, sewage, telephone, cell phone, TV, internet, and most of all electricity. And without electricity you won't have the other services. Without electricity you won't have heating or air conditioning, you won't have refrigeration, your food will spoil, and without electricity you may not be able to cook. Eating cold beans and weenies will get old fast. Everything in the U.S. either requires electricity or is directly related to something that does. Without electricity, everything stops. As I see it, COVID-19 does not have to be a deadly virus to cause a nationwide disruption of the infrastructure that we depend on every day of our lives. All that has to happen is for enough people in the electrical power generation industry to come down with or be exposed to COVID-19 and not be able to go to work or decide to stay home and ride it out, and the rest of our infrastructure will suffer and fail. The U.S. power grid has three major parts: the Eastern Interconnection, the Western Interconnection, and the Texas Interconnection. Think of the U.S. power grid as the largest machine ever built in the United States. As of January 1, 2019, there were around 9,700 power plants in the United States that have operational generators with a combined generation capacity of at least 1 megawatt. Currently in the U.S., we have over 55,000 substations and around 450,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines, and well over 160,000 miles of overhead transmission lines in our cities, towns, and rural areas. The U.S. power grid has hundreds of millions of moving and non-moving parts. At some point in time, most of these parts will need to be adjusted, repaired, or replaced. If the engineers, technicians, and administrative personnel that work 24/7, 365 to keep the electricity on cannot go to work due to having COVID-19, or if they stay home due to the fear of contracting COVID-19 and bringing it home to their families, then all bets are off. Without the thousands of highly trained and skilled personnel working, it will only be a matter of time before even the smallest of problems occurring on any one of the three major power grids could cascade into a widespread power outage. The Northeast power blackout that occurred on August 14, 2003 was just such an outage. It left an estimated 55 million people in parts of the U.S. and Canada without power for days. The investigation revealed that a power generation plant located in East Lake, Ohio, a northeast suburb of Cleveland, went offline during a high demand for electrical power. This put a greater strain on the high-voltage power lines in Walton Hills, Ohio, a southeast suburb of Cleveland. The Walton Hills power lines later went offline after they came in contact with overgrown trees. This caused the load to be transferred to other transmission lines that were not able to carry the increased load, tripping their circuit breakers. Once this small cascade of events occurred, many of the generators that were in use at the time suddenly lost some of their loads, causing them to accelerate to an out-of-phase condition with the grid. They then went offline to prevent damage to the generators and further damage to other parts of the grid. The end results of this seemingly small event of tree branches coming in contact with the high-voltage power lines in Walton Hills, Ohio, resulted in over 100 power plants up and down the east coast of the U.S. going into shutdown mode, leaving 55 million people in the U.S. and parts of Canada without electrical power for days. At this time, the biggest threat that I see from COVID-19 is not a pandemic, but a perceived pandemic, or causing what I call a panic-demic. I would describe a panic-demic as where the majority of the population is not sick, but there is such a widespread state of panic brought on by the fear that they could become sick, that they will hunker down and not leave their homes, not even to go to work. An interruption to any one of the three major power grids or to parts of the power grids could result in major interruptions to other vital parts of our infrastructure. Without electricity, you won't have running water, functional sewage and wastewater treatment plants, communications such as telephones, cell service, internet service, cable TV, satellite TV, or antenna TV. Without electricity, you won't have gasoline or diesel fuel. Without diesel fuel, you won't have trucking. And without trucking, you don't have food in the grocery stores. Without electricity, you won't have fuel for our first responders, such as police, fire, and paramedics. The end results of a widespread panic-demic, with a large percentage of the population staying home out of fear, could be major interruptions to or the total collapse of our infrastructure. Please subscribe, like, comment, and click the little bell. And thanks from the On My Workbench channel.